DNA for a moment. Prebiotic forces can't arrange DNA nucleobases that contain the stored information of the DNA strand. So even if we've got a fully functioning strand of DNA or RNA, we've got carbohydrates, proteins, and a lipid bilayer, you still have to have this stored information to direct functions, right? To tell it what to do in the DNA code. And I'm talking about basically nucleotide bases, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. In an extremely simplified fashion, it's like the blueprints, the recipe book for life. And those letters are pairing up to form chains. You mentioned a little while ago that a group of 3 of those letters, codons, basically can act like words that will tell the cell what to do. You put all of that in the right order, and somehow it all comes together. But that information has to be ordered. It's almost like a computer code. And then you think of the complexity of some of this, where the direction of protein development in human DNA, I think it's about 3 billion base pairs. But even the simplest cell, we're talking about thousands or hundreds of thousands, right?
Hundreds of thousands of what?
Of base pairs in just
yeah. Millions of base pairs for.
Okay.
And yes. Yeah, and in the simplest ones, hundreds of thousands. So that's a real problem. So you said if you already have your DNA and RNA, if you already have your DNA and RNA, where'd the code come from? It's just a string of letters that are going to code for nothing useful. They code for nothing useful. So you had to have had information put in before you can have any useful DNA and RNA. Now you start with the nucleotides, and you have to polymerize the nucleotides together. Nobody knows how these go together because, again, the free energy is positive, which means these do not want to go. So you have to have some other clever methods where these can hook up. And they don't hook up cleanly. You get branching. They get, in the case of RNA, they get this 2' 5' linkage. In the case of RNA, they need a separate base. You exclude one of the bases on the DNA, you have to bring in uracil on the RNA, so it needs a separate base. The DNA can't make doesn't make proteins directly. It has to go through first templating to RNA to get RNA made, and then from the RNA, generally you get the proteins. That's the normal sequence that we look at. And you need lots of support enzymes. So you need enzymes to string these things together. You need a code to string these things together. Nobody knows where that came from. You need enzyme support for any one of these. DNA to be useful to make RNA, for RNA to be useful to make proteins. You need other support enzymes that bring in all the individual amino acids when you need them into place in order for this to happen. None of that is known. None of that is known how that happened on a prebiotic Earth. We are utterly lost on that when it comes to the origin of life.
See, this is something that I think our audiences need to know. The public needs to know these issues that are being faced that are not being talked about. I mean, Dr. Tour, you've been talking about them for a while, but very few people have tried to even mention the unspeakable of, we don't know on this origin of life issue how it could have happened by itself. But every time that we're talking to someone, I always like to relate it to something that we could understand. Like, I mean, let's just talk about a written code, right? A book or something like that. How does DNA's code resemble a written work, like a book?
Oh yeah, and it's much longer than a book.
Okay.
I mean, it prescribes what RNA is going to be made, and then the RNA prescribes what the order of attachment is of those 20 amino acids to make the proteins. And it's that order of attachment that is going to define the function of that protein. Is that protein going to be used to make more RNA, or is that protein going to be used to break down the carbohydrates that you've just eaten, so that energy can then be applied as glycogen in your body so that you can get energy from it. Enzymes do all of these functions, and the functions are defined by the order of the amino acids in it. So if you don't have the inherent order in the RNA, which came from the inherent order within the DNA, you're out of luck. I mean, it's just not going to do anything. It's just going to be a bunch of gibberish.
Well, again, I would probably laugh at someone who handed me even a simplistic book or an article even and said, that created itself. Books don't write themselves. So what do you say to students who believe that DNA could just have evolved its information?
Yeah, that makes no sense. Yeah. Only an idiot would say that. That's what I have to say. It makes absolutely no sense. It's really nonsense to say that DNA could inherently form with a functioning code. Things don't happen like that any more than you can take a random box of letters, shake it together, dump it on the ground, and have a written book. You might occasionally find a three-letter word. Yeah. On occasion, you might find that. But it's not next then to another intelligible word where you're going to form a book out of this thing. Right. And remember, even if you had 3 or 4 letters in a word, 3 or 4 words in a string that happen to form, it's not going to make any sense. There's nothing on either side of that. You need lots of information. So nobody in their right mind even says this except people who know nothing about the field.